A lot of times when we go through things, we go through this stage where we ask ourselves, how could I not have seen the signs? And we go through the should haves, the could haves, and the would haves. And every human goes through this stage. But how long we go through this stage and what we do with this stage is really important. And there are times where when you go through something and you learn from it, know that the human experience is universal. And when you feel alone, like you're such an idiot and you're the only person this could ever have happened to, just know that there is someone else in some other corner of the world who has experienced the same things as you have. And just know that your purpose from this situation is to analyze your missteps, where you went wrong, what you could have done differently, not in a sense to blame yourself. A lot of self compassion. I think when we need to heal from things, it requires a lot of self compassion. You see, shame is this foggy window that is going to block you from accessing the parts of you that need to heal. Because when we are ashamed of something, we hide from it. If we are ashamed of something we've done wrong, we hide from people. If we are ashamed of something within ourselves, our body's protective mechanism is going to hide us from it. And what that shame does, it just builds up in us. It builds up in us, and we carry that shame around with us. And that shame keeps us trapped right where we started from. But just know that you have the power to move on from that shame. Shame isn't wrong. You have toxic shame and you have good shame. If you're able to feel shame for your actions, it means that you're able to care about something you've done. It means that you're able to feel that something about something you've done. But when it becomes toxic is when we are bound to our shame. And I'm speaking from a place of literally this podcast, me talking, or I may turn this into a video cast, is me taking myself out of a rut of shame. Because shame thrives in silence, shame thrives in isolation, and chances are someone else has gone through that human experience. And there are two sides to it. They could have gone through that human experience to help you, or you could have gone through that human experience to help someone else. And you pass along and you pass it along and you pass it along. Now, one of the cycles in my life that I work to break is that cycle of how do I give it a name that is not a buzzword? It's that cycle of I'm trying to find a word to give the cycle that isn't a buzzword that sends everyone's bells off, because practically everybody knows about this term. It is thrown about to here, there, and I don't think particular is thrown about because it's a loose term. I think it's because people have started to wake up to such a cycle and have really, really, really started to open their eyes, and more people have started to identify what's happening to them, which is good. It's a revolutionary movement because in the previous generations before us, they didn't know what was going on. They had to deal with that and carry that shame. And they passed that shame on from generation to generation. But now, when we know what's happening around us, when we can identify and label behaviors, we are able to say, okay, this is wrong. This is not okay. What I'm going through is not okay. And now that I've talked I have identified what I would like to name the cycle. Sorry for that pop. I had a piece of gum and it was just stopping me from really talking. But the cycle is the cycle of the self absorbed. It is the cycle of the self absorbed. And in my journey and healing, I'm still healing and in that journey. I have analyzed the trends of people I have met, and they all have one thing in common: the cycle of the self absorbed. They are so concerned about themselves that they will do anything to meet their own needs before they think about the needs of someone else. And there are so many ways that the cycle of the self absorbed can begin. And just know that I used to think, and a lot of people have put it that way, that people are magnetized to you and you attract these type of people to you. Just know that different people are magnetized to you. Good people, bad people, mixture, good and bad, complex human beings, people who respect you and who love you, people who don't respect you and don't love you because they don't respect and love themselves. There are so many people who you will meet in all walks of life. However, there is that entry point that those people need to cross to get into your life. So you will meet all types of people, but they have to get an entry point to your life. And I really want you to follow along closely with me because this is a revelation. When I pray to God and I ask God to reveal so the cycles and the curses and all of the bondages can be released, this is a message straight from God to my tongue to whoever hears this, because I didn't write a script. I didn't really process and think too much. However, I know that I analyzed my cycles and realized that this is my journey. This is my story. I've read tons of books on people who are self absorbed, the cycle of the self absorbed. And I have tried so many times to really defeat meeting these people. And I have been told, or I have read it in books, these people are attracted to you, they're magnetized to you. And I have a different perspective to that. My perspective is that I meet different types of people. However, there are some people you meet that they have certain ways they want to get an entry point that you can now think, okay, what is this person's reason for wanting that entry point to you? And the way how I have put it and analyzed it and put it in my life is, when you go to the immigration for any country, you go to a visa office, you are seeking an entry point into their country. They meet people from all walks of life: criminals, good people, people who have no criminal records, people who want to come into their country for good reasons, people who want to come in their country illegal to do illegal things, to run off. They meet people who want to come legally to find work or to visit, and they all have a process of how they vet these people. Now, can I say that if a country has criminals there, that criminals are attracted to that country? No. All different types of people go to that country. But when you find a country that they have noticed that their entry their entry processes are a little bit too loose, they become stricter. They require more countries to come, or they ban certain countries from visiting after their experiences. And the number one thing about immigration services that most immigration lawyers will tell you, or most websites you'll read upon, is that before you go, they have a list of everything about you, or things that they are looking for with a person, or they will know how to spot the signs of someone who is trying to come in to do something weird, as well as they treat everyone that they're coming to run off until they could prove otherwise. And I wanted to really put that into my life. And it is not to say that it will be rigid where no one comes in, because that isn't necessarily healthy. However, and it's not to develop that mindset of deep mistrust of everyone, but it is to put up a firm border. That is why countries have border control. It is to put a firm border around yourself. And literally, I'm going to act like the immigration officer of my life. I'm going to act like the visa granting officer of my life. And so, every person you meet, they are a mixture of good or bad, or they could be bad. However, you have a running list of, from your past experience, who has tried to enter the country. What are the signs a person who has tried to enter the country to do something illegal? What do they show? And the number one thing you could think about is they show that they don't have that much proof that they intend. What is their real purpose for visiting the country? They don't have that much proof of their income if they are working, how long they're going to stay in the country. They don't have that much proof that they intend to leave after the period of visiting. What is that person's purpose? And so border control and immigration officers, they have rules, but over time, when they have seen the different ways that people have tried to cross the border, and the different technologies that people have used to try to cross the border, they have tightened their measures. They have tightened their measures, and they are strict with their measures so that they can process their borders. And sometimes some people slip through the cracks, but believe me, they get them. Or sometimes some people slip through the cracks and they just slip through the cracks. But the number one thing is that they have a set of previous trespasses and previous things that people have done to pass their borders that don't show that they intend to have good intent when they access their country. And so at baseline, everyone who comes in front of them is planning to do something bad until they prove otherwise. What do they use? Especially when it is the first time they are seeing you, when it's the first time you are applying. So that can be applied to your dating life. What do they look for in these people? If they are a certain age, if they are not in school, what are they doing? What ties do they have? What investments have they made to show that they plan to return from the country? What do they plan to do when they come into the country? They ask you certain questions, and they have studied, and they know the loopholes, and they know the excuses that people give when they have intent to come and do what they don't want to do. And even if they can't quite put their finger on it just yet, you are monitored, and you are given what's called an I-94. And if they let you in their country for 2 months, and that I-94 date says 2 months, if you're not out the country before that date, your visa is revoked. 100% revoked. If you go a day over that date, your visa is automatically revoked. If you don't apply to extend your visa before that date, extend your visit time, say you're there for over 6 months, your visa is unequivocally revoked. And so I want to put this together in the same way with my dating life or my life moving forward, because the cycle of the self absorbed doesn't just occur in your dating life. You experience that with friends, you experience that with family, you can experience that with partners, you can experience that with authority figures, you could experience that with just about anyone you meet, because just about anyone you meet is human. However, borders and a process to vet these people. And I think that's where a lot of the people I have, I don't, how do I put this? I think that's a lot of what I don't really see when I try to establish therapeutic relationships, because I do want to do the work, but there is a process that maybe I just have to do that work for myself and come up with my own process. So, when you go out with someone, whether it be a friend, whether it be someone who romantically interested in you, just think that everyone is out to get something for themselves until you start to have a certain criteria in your brain about what you want for yourself. You are the country. You are the country. What would you expect or want from someone who is about to enter your country? And the country could be symbolic of your life, your time, your energy, um, your body. What do you want to experience with this person, not from the person? What do you want to experience with them? Because it's a collaborative effort. It's something that you want to do with the person. So someone did give me the advice to try to figure out what I want from myself, because what you want for yourself, when you go out into the world and you meet people from all walks of life, you will meet good people, bad people, a mixture, a complex group of people. People who are good, they've made mistakes. What do you want to experience with these people? And then you get to know them. They only have one shot to impress you, to get into your country, which is your orbit, your life, and your energy. What that person does with that one shot to impress you, I'm going to talk about the dating aspect, because friendships and family has a whole different meaning. A cycle I've realized with myself is when I first get to meet someone, they only have one shot to impress you. What do they do with that one shot that they get to impress you? And a lot of times, too, before you even meet someone, you get this feeling in your stomach. It is a mixture of your intuition, God warning you, the spirit warning you, your previous experiences. That is just telling you, don't even go out with that person to begin with. And so you will hear a lot of stories of people saying, well, I went to the immigration office and I didn't do nothing wrong. They just rejected me out the bat. Sometimes these people can just sense something and they're like, this person up to no good, denied. If you don't have enough evidence to prove that you are here with good intent, that you want to enter their country for good intent, for the purpose you are applying, you are denied. And it is the same thing with dating. You go to your visa interview, you have whatever documents you need on hand, you want to impress that officer, you want to make that officer know your life is in good standing, you're there to visit their country for the purpose that you were there to visit their country, and you want to give it your best shot. You're not going to go to that interview seeking access to someone else's country and go be talking a bunch of, crap. I mean, there are some people like that, which are the people who are the overtly self absorbed people, the people who don't really care. Their arrogance is just, I don't really care whether I get it, whether I don't. I'm just going to be me. And then those people, they don't get it. Um, you're not gonna go to that interview, you know, not presenting as your best, not saying the right things. You're not going to say to the officer anything that you believe is going to even tip them off if you have bad intentions. If you have bad intentions for their country, if you plan to, if you are applying to stay in their country as a visitor, and then you have intentions to overstay your welcome or do other things, you're not going to do anything to tip off the officer. And that is not right, and that is not legal. I would like to clarify, but the analogy could be added in the same. The number one thing is, you go on a date with someone, that is their one shot to impress you. And the number one thing is being solid and confident in who you are, your value and your worth and what you deserve. And it is not that you're arrogant or cocky or boastful. And that is like a misstep and a misconception I've had, like, oh, to be humble, but you could have humility but also value yourself. So when you dress up, when you go out, you should have value within yourself first and foremost, that you don't accept certain things from people. People don't get the chance to do things to you or say weird things to you or not give their best shot and waste your time. In fact, before you even go on the date, I'm sure someone may say, that comes naturally. But you know what? This is not a place of judgment and shame. There are a lot of people like myself who, when you've been conditioned and you have been raised by the self absorbed, you don't develop any life skills before you even enter the world. Especially if you had been in that cycle with primary caregivers who they took from you. You were their footstool and they didn't help you instill boundaries or respect the boundaries you came to build up for yourself. You learn that you are there to please and to serve other people. And so it is no shame and no judgment if someone who grew up in an environment, especially a sheltered environment, where they weren't allowed to even healthily formulate friendships and connections with people, that when they finally get on into the world, they don't even know what to do. So it is from a very elementary level of compassion that before you even go on the date, make sure a friend knows where you're going. You send a picture of that person, you send your location, you let them know let your friend know where you're going, what's this person's name, where they're taking you. And the number one thing before you even step foot on that date, pay attention to where that person says they're going to take you. Pay attention to where that person says they're going to take you. That really matters. Now, it may sound like a lot when you are hearing it all at once. When all of it is being thrown at you at once, it may sound like a lot. But the thing about it is, think back to the country. You go on a visa interview and they ask you, who are you going to stay with? Where are you going to go when you come into this country? They must know where you're going. You have to provide them with an address. You don't just say, I don't know where I'm going, or I'm not going to tell you where I'm going to visit when I come to your country. That is not, they need to know your address and where you'll be when you come to visit their country. Now, pay attention to where someone says they are going to take you. Someone who cares about your safety and about your proximity, they will ensure that they take you to somewhere. Number one, they'll let you know where they're going to take you. Number two, the place will not be creepy or spooky or dark. And number three, they will also ensure that it is a place that is in reach for you. Pay attention to someone wanting to take you somewhere that is closer to their home, that is farther from your home, and that is not somewhere, let's say, well lit. That is not somewhere. Hmm. That is not somewhere that is public, where other people can see what they're doing and their actions. Demand to know where they're going to take you, and if necessary, get your own transportation to there. Don't depend on them to get you there. Have your money on you, so that when things, or if things should go awry, that you leave, that you have um the means to leave. You go to that visa office or that immigration office, and their walls are high. At least the ones in the country that I am from, the embassy, I should say. Their walls are high. They have barbed wires. It is a thick security measure for you to get into the embassy. That is even before you even enter their country. You have to go through security measures before you even enter their embassy. And so ensure that you have cash on you, ensure that you have cellular data, ensure that your phone is charged, ensure that you have your emergency numbers on dial. And it's not to scare you, but again, think about the embassy, the immigration office. Do they just leave their walls open? Like, okay, anybody can walk in, even though they're coming to get the visa, and like, there's a glass wall between you and them, and like, they can't really do nothing. Is their walls open to anybody, for anybody to even walk into the embassy? First of all, absolutely not. And so these measures are to ensure, okay, you should also develop like a code word if something feels off and weird. You excuse yourself, hey, I'm about to use the bathroom, and you leave. You don't even tell this person that you're going to leave, because they may try to stop you from leaving. You just excuse yourself and you go. But you can't do that if you don't have on cell service, if you don't have any, you know, um, thing on your phone, if you don't have any money to order yourself your own taxi, and if you're far away from where you live. Don't let a person take you too far away from you live on the first date. It should be a centrally located public location. See, does the embassy official come to your home when you want something from them? You want to experience their country? Does the embassy official say, okay, you can stay at your home? Remember, you're the embassy official, right? And the country that this person would like to experience. So the analogy, keep that in mind. Do they come to your home and be like, okay, you want a visa from us? Let me drive to your home and interview you. No, you have to go to them. You have to go to their location. You have to put your best self forward. Now, there are some people who they will start off weird to desensitize you to certain intentions they have, or to see how you would react to the intentions that they have. There are some really sick people like that, where they will make certain jokes to desensitize you to what they plan to do, or they have certain strange topics. They won't necessarily make a joke, but they might tell you a story to see how you would respond to that story. For example, I want to give an example from my real life experience. There was a person I was getting to know, and this, I would say, is one of the better experiences I've had at like spotting certain things because this is a learning curve for me. But he always would talk about violence, getting in fights all the time, um, a guy, hitting his partner and him coming to save the day. And his stories are always about violence and about him being arrogant and just, but he paints himself as the hero in that story. Now, if you go to the embassy and you would like to get a visa to enter the country, are you going to go up to the official and be like, I could have done drugs, but I saw my friend doing drugs and I didn't do drugs. I'm a good person. Let me in your country. First of all, the more you talk and you are hinting that you don't do something, their alarm bells are going to ring off like, red flag denied. So if this person has just one shot to impress you, and they start off out the gate talking about violence, talking about really sensitive topics, whether or not they have the intention, it's not tasteful. It's showing a lack of maturity. It's showing a lack of them being able to really connect with you on the level that you want, because at that point you already know what you want for yourself. You would like someone that you could have really stimulating conversations with, have experiences. And if this person, has one chance to impress you and they come saying all of these stories, your alarm bells should go off. And a lot of people have the tendency to think that because they wouldn't do something, that the other person, they project their character to that person. And I've been guilty of that a lot. Like I would say, well, when I made like a weird joke already too, but I have zero intention of doing that. So when you hear someone else make like a weird joke, like, but you can't project your character onto someone else. Just know that if someone has one shot to impress you and they have already started out the gate telling you stories about violence, about how they fought with people and about how they are the hero of their friends, violent, past, and they are such a good person, and they just know that that should be a red flag. And guess what? It is not your duty to go and find out. Do you think these officers, they when they spot a red flag, they're like, all right, let me just let them in and go to find out? It's different. I mean, if someone walked up to the officer and said, listen, officer, my friends sell weed, but I don't. I am the one out of my friends who don't sell weed. Let me into your country. I don't sell those type of stuff. I don't do those type of stuff. Like, or they go to the officer like, what if you let me into the country and then boom, I started selling weed? How would you feel? The officer is gonna be like, okay, this person is not okay. They are not gonna enter the country, because sometimes people do have the tendency to admit what they intend to do to you, to sensitize you to see how you're going to respond to what they intend to do to you. Or they tell it in a story where it's actually they who did it, but they tell it in the story of someone else in their life doing it and them being the hero of that story. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Someone has only one chance on a date to impress you. And if they start out on the date with these weird, bizarre stories, that are just some really weird topics, don't fall for it. Even if this person may not be a violent person, it is really tasteless. When you take someone out on the first date, the first impression that you give them really matters. This person is showing you that they don't really care. They're just trying to gauge what you accept. And it is your country. You get to test what enters your country and what doesn't. And someone getting one chance to show you their best selves and taking that and using it to be weird, do not trust it. So I started off with the number one thing is the entry. The entry. Everyone, you meet people from different walks of life. No, you don't just attract these people to you. You don't attract these people to you just off the bat like that. There's an access point that these people have to cross to get to you. Now, the number one thing that these people use to get to you for an entry point, or at least my experience, is being overly generous, like too generous to a suspicious degree. It's like they're trying to buy your love, they're trying to really reel you into something. Now, when you go to, again, I'm going to keep mentioning the border control because that is just an analogy I've adapted to this situation. When you go to the, you see, the analogy just keeps getting better because I was like using the terms interchangeably, and now I'm realizing like when you go to the embassy officer, that's a whole different officer than when you even get, when you even if you're granted the visa, you still aren't entitled to entering the country. Like if you even get on a plane, hop on a plane, stand in front of a border control officer, and they decide, okay, something off about you, you can be instantly denied and turned away even if you have been granted the visa. So even in that way, think of that approach. Even before you enter the embassy office, there is a security measure. You go to the embassy office, you speak with the officer, they have certain criteria that they're looking for, and you're putting your best self forward. And even when you are granted, because some people can put their best self forward and it is a mask. So even when you are granted access to the country by a visa, it is still doesn't give you the right to enter if you meet a border control officer when you're on the country soil and they decide no, this person, they put on a good show for embassy officers, but they have been like a little bit weird, and they stop you and they go to search you or your phone and they find something of ill intent, or they search your suitcase and they see something, you're turned back, revoked, access denied. So I was getting back to the point of that entry point, that initial entry point, that interview stage, that embassy interview stage is the date. That is when you first meet that person, and they have one shot to impress you, to put on their best selves. So you can meet two type of people: people who really put on their best shot. They're a perfect gentleman, the perfect person, the perfect woman. I'm really touchy about talking about it from the space of a woman, where I put that the woman could be the aggressor there, because my experience is what I am speaking from. And um when I read a book by Lundy Bancroft called "Why Does He Do That?" and they speak about, he has been like a counselor of sorts of, thousands, hundreds of thousands of these type of self-absorbed people. He has always made sure to address how the majority is a certain gender, as as in comparison to the small majority who are the other gender. And he made sure to highlight that even when, I don't want to go right into that, but I will say, I'll keep it neutral, you meet a self-absorbed person, and sorry, you can meet two different types of people, and they could put their best foot forward, or they could totally just really say some weird stuff to let you know like what they intend to do to you, and they gauge to see how you would respond. um and so That entry point is there. Now, say for example, that person on one end, they totally like blow the date. They totally blow it. They are mentioning weird jokes, and it makes you uncomfortable, and you're the type of person to kind of overlook those things. Like you're like, they're just joking. You're in denial. You're like, no, and you go out with them another time, then they would have successfully like crossed your entry point. At that point, they would have crossed your entry point. Um, and that is why you should have a border control officer for your life. Like, yeah, some things slip the cracks, but you should be keeping watch of that person. And once you should be like, okay, one time is maybe it's just like a little slip of the tongue. Maybe that person is just socially awkward. Then a second time, someone is supposed to maintain and they make the same jokes again. You're like, no, no. In fact, it only takes one time. It only takes one time for a person to make a joke before you should leave. From my own painful experiences, just take it from me. But I'm saying in life, sometimes we could talk in hindsight, but it doesn't always end up like that. And for whatever reason, a self-absorbed person crosses our entry point, we should still have up borders. Now, the border control officer in our life are our boundaries. They are our boundaries. So on the first date or on the date, you have your expectations of the experiences you want to have with a person. You want to experience kindness with that person. You want to experience love. You want to experience something healthy. You want to develop something at a slow pace. You want to get to know this person for who they are before you want to engage. You want to ensure that this person is educated, and you're not wrong for that. You want to make sure that this person has something going on for their life, and so on and so forth. That is the prepping stage. But the other stage is the character stage, because yeah, they could sell themselves to you, they could make themselves out to be this perfect person, but you keep watching them. But I would say the number one, once they make weird jokes on the first date, they're in the trash. They only had one time to impress you, and they took that one time to make a fool of themselves. They're in the trash. Regardless of if they mean it or not, do not stick around to find out. Do not. They are in the trash. A person has one time to make a good impression on you because you are valuable. Remember, you would have already walked into the situation knowing you are valuable, knowing what you are expecting to experience with someone on a date. You're expecting to experience, probably laughter, getting to share a good environment with this person where you feel safe, and that person takes that one chance to make you feel unsafe, to make you feel weirded out. They are in the trash. But now I'm talking about the experience where, okay, they slip through the crack, and you have now given them that entry point. Whether they made the joke and they slipped through the crack, or whether they were the perfect person on the date and they slipped through the crack. The number one thing you should be looking for is generosity. Too overly generous. You go to the border control officer, and you're up to something, and you want to win them over. So you say, all right, here are a dozen roses for you, Madam Border Control Officer. And I always used to wonder, why are those people full of so much attitude? Why are they so serious? And I realized they are the boundaries of the country. They are trained to be the boundaries of the country. So the embassy officer, the access point of the country, of of granting you just the paperwork to enter. And then the boundaries of the country are like those border control officers. So they're strict on business. They know that people have their little stuff up their sleeve. And they also know that there are good people who just really, I'm trying to refrain from using the word good or bad. And they know that there are people who are just really coming into the country to really do what they say they're coming into the country for: a business, a conference, visit family, whatever they have applied for. They are really coming to that, and they're there to honor what they said they're going to do. But they know the little tricks and sleeves and stuff people have up their sleeve. And so look out for somebody who's just overly generous off the bat. Overly generous off the bat. Overly generous off the bat. So, in the eyes of the self-absorbed, their generosity comes with strings attached. Their generosity is at a price. It is to access your life, to access your orbit, to get you to maybe conform to what they want you to do, or to soften up your inhibitions to them, or to say, oh, look, they are so kind, they are so generous. But it's always a point in question to ask yourself, why is this person being so generous? It is not normal for someone to just meet you, not know anything about you, and they are overly generous off the bat. And I don't mean that this person shouldn't be courteous, they shouldn't be kind, they shouldn't, if you have views about someone paying for the date, that they should. I mean, this person is trying to shower you with gifts and overly complimenting you. It's like the compliments are stifling, but they haven't taken the time to get to know you as a person. Look out, because that is the entry point of the cycle of the self-absorbed. I could open up my journal right now and I could turn to the page where I've written out maybe 5 of my experiences in this cycle. Because trust me, you it's not that you just keep falling into the traps of these people. There are thousands, millions of people like that out of the billions of people on the earth. But when we strengthen who we are on the inside, and when we truly like know what we're looking for, as someone else advised me, and when we truly like understand a healthy dynamic, because when you've been raised in something so unhealthy, you don't even know what it looks like for someone to take you out on a healthy date, because one, you've never been on one, two, it wasn't modeled in front of you by your primary caregivers. So you don't really know what you're looking for. So it's not healthy to for someone to be overly generous off the bat and they do not know anything about you. So I'm going to go into like a pop phrase, like a psychologically pop phrase that is used a lot, called love bombing. So the overly generous person is love bombing you. What they are doing is they are just setting the tone to really come into your life. They're setting the tone to really access that entry point through like excess generosity.